All right, let's get into it. We're going to go way beyond just what's on your plate and dive deep into a pretty huge philosophical fight, the whole debate around veganism.
See, this isn't just about food choices, right? It's a massive clash between two totally different ways of looking at the world. Is going vegan the ultimate moral choice you can make, or is it just fundamentally hypocritical in the messy, complicated world we all live in? Let's break down the arguments.
So, let's start with the big one, a question of morality. We're going to unpack the case for veganism as this absolute, non-negotiable moral duty.
And that brings us to what's known as abolitionist argument. Now, this view frames veganism not as some kind of, lifestyle choice, but as the moral baseline, the absolute minimum for anyone who says they believe in justice.
And here's the key distinction. You really got to get this. For abolitionists, this isn't about, compassion or feeling sorry for animals. Nope. It's a justice movement. The goal is to fundamentally change their status from property to beings with rights.
Wow. Okay, this quote really gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? That parallel they're drawing, it's intentional, and it is stark. From this point of view, the real core injustice is the very idea that a thinking, feeling being can be owned by someone else, period.
So this is where we get the huge split between animal welfare and animal rights. See, animal welfare is okay with things like certified humane labels. It's about reducing suffering, but for animal rights folks, that's just putting a nicer face on the problem. They'd say you can't regulate an injustice, you have to end it. Think about it. They argue there's no such thing as humane slavery, so how can there be humane exploitation?
And that leads to this incredibly stark conclusion. It's all or nothing. In this way of thinking, there is no middle ground. No meatless Mondays, no baby steps, no just cutting back. It's a simple, binary choice. You're either participating in animal exploitation or you're a vegan. There's no in between.
Okay, so that's a powerful argument. But what's the other side? Well, it's what you could call the hypocrisy charge. This whole perspective challenges that black and white moral certainty. It basically says that trying to be ethically pure in our modern world, it's a total fantasy.
And this quote introduces a really interesting idea, cruelty baggage. The argument is that, if we're being honest with ourselves, our hands are never really clean, no matter what our diet is. The world we live in is just too complex, too interconnected for that.
And this idea of cruelty baggage goes way, way beyond what's on our plates. I mean, think about the human slavery baked into the supply chains of our electronics, or all the insects wiped out by pesticides, or what about the birds, rabbits, and mice killed by massive crop harvesters, harvesting the very plants that vegans eat. This viewpoint says harm is just an inescapable part of modern life, and to focus only on meat is to draw a completely arbitrary line in the sand.
And that kind of brings us to the central challenge, doesn't it? If we accept that all our choices cause some level of harm, if it's literally impossible to cause zero harm, then where do you draw the line? Every single one of us is making a calculation, whether we realize it or not, about what harm we're okay with. So the big question becomes, why is your line morally better than someone else's?
Which leads us perfectly into another huge battleground in this whole thing, the environmental debate. So when it comes to the carbon footprint of our food, you've got two very different stories. On the one hand, the pro-vegan view often points to big UN reports saying animal agriculture is basically an ecological disaster. But then the pragmatist critique comes back and says, whoa, hold on. They argue that data is cherry-picked from these huge global averages. They're lumping in massive deforestation in the Amazon with a small local farm that's raising grass-fed beef. They say it's not a fair comparison.
And this is a fascinating way to look at it. They make this calorie for carbon comparison. The argument goes like this. If you look at the carbon it costs to produce a certain number of calories, things get tricky. For example, tomatoes grown in a heated greenhouse and flown halfway across the world can actually have a worse carbon-to-calorie ratio than local grass-fed beef. It really complicates the simple meat is bad, plants are good narrative.
So, let's be clear. The counter-argument here isn't that eating meat is great for the planet. Not at all. The point they're making is that reducing harm requires a lot more thinking than just don't eat meat. Some vegan choices, they argue, can actually have a bigger impact than some conscious meat-eating choices. It's about how food is produced, not just what it is.
Okay, so we've looked at these two really powerful, really different philosophies. So what's the takeaway here? At the end of the day, it's not really about food. It's a core philosophical divide. You have the abolitionist, whose goal is to abolish one specific fundamental injustice, treating animals as property. That's it.
Then you have the pragmatist, whose goal is to reduce overall harm in a super complex world where every single choice has a cost. They're playing two different games with two different rulebooks.
And that leaves us with one heck of a question to think about. Is the goal to perfect one single moral choice, to take an absolute stand against one injustice, even if you can't be perfect everywhere else? Or is the goal to do the messy, difficult work of balancing many imperfect choices, trying to find the path of least harm overall? There's no easy answer to that one.